Hello out there, friends. Want to just jump on here and make a quick video. I'm buried under lectures right now and Bible studies with people here at Homestead and all the things that God's got me doing. But I was called out. This is kind of humorous to me, almost like a fourth grader on a playground called me out, to put up my dukes. It's almost reminiscent of the Dominicans, God's dogs, the Pope's hounds. The Pope told him to go out and search out every heretic and on a flat earth to the very ends of the earth and kill every last one of them. And James White, the avowed King James hater and formal equivalence hater and received text, ecclesiastical text hater, has called me out. And I guess he thinks he has to seek and search out every King James guy and try to get us off of formal equivalence, King James Bible, onto a paraphrased so-called Bible out of a corrupt text. But nonetheless, I want to just bring this out. He put out a little video recently where somebody had given him a couple of messages that I had done a presentation, and I have no idea why this is any of his business. I guess I called his book out, and therefore he has a right to respond publicly to it. But nonetheless, I was asked by a New Testament local church to speak on the subject of Satan's attack on the Bible. We know that one of the hardest things in churches today is get people to love the Bible, read the Bible, live the Bible, and probably the most important thing to do. And so certainly churches would want to know how to avoid the attack of Satan. And of course, it all started in the garden, and Jesus talked about that father of lies and how that he abode not in the truth. And when he speaketh today, he speaketh a lie. He's never changed his lying ways and his tactics. He's still, the Bible's still under attack to this very day. And why bring up James White in that? Well, in my presentation, I mentioned his book. And the reason is because, Mr. White, you're a part of that attack. Your book, let's not try to play games. It was written, and you gave your summation of it in this little video you put out. The summation from my perspective is that this book was put out for the purpose of getting people to throw out their King James and get an NIV. And I'll show you that in your book here in just a minute. And so that was really the purpose of your book. I believe you're a plant in the churches. And I believe that I should not debate you. Most likely I will not. But I'm considering it under the correct parameters. Now, let me tell you what my biggest problem here is. I don't debate Catholics. And you are a staunch predestinarian. You love John Calvin. Calvin is a murderous villain. He consented to the death of Michael Servetus and also historically took responsibility for his death. He basically bragged about it afterwards. That's your hero. You call yourself a Calvinist. You're also, from what I can tell in your doctrinal statement, all millennial, which means you're an allegoricalist. You employ a double hermeneutic. You are basically going back to the doctrines, the false doctrine that came out of the school of Alexandria of Egypt, the catechetical school, and then was, of course, honed by Origen and then went into the hands of Augustine. And Augustine, using that principle that you use as an allegoricalist to do away with the millennial kingdom. And that's the reason why allegoricalism was introduced, and covenant theology was introduced, was to do away with the millennial kingdom. And you're a covenant theology guy. And so you don't take the Bible literally. You're not a biblical literalist. So you are like out of my scope of purview. You're not even we're on different planets. I'm a biblical literalist. You employ a double hermeneutic arbitrarily when necessary to your schematic of theology. You employ allegoricalism. And I'm assuming you're a 70 AD guy, preterist, which the authorship of Revelation defies that completely by all scholarship available today and has always existed. But nonetheless, you are a staunch hard-shell predestinarian, and I wrote some things down, so please forgive me, friends, for having to look at a few things. I want to make sure I touch on the things that are pertinent, and I'm going to deal with some of the things he said here in just a minute. But you love Calvin, he's a murderous villain, and basically you love the Puritans. And I heard you dealing with, in one of your debates there against Stephen Anderson, who I am not a friend of, and I'm not a Ruckmanite, and I don't follow John Calvin, I follow Christ. But nonetheless, when dealing with Stephen Anderson, you talked about how you love the Puritans and the Puritan style of worship, and you ought to come see what Puritanism really looks like and all this kind of business. If you're a Puritan, you are in the lineage of those who murdered my forefathers. Your Puritanism, state church, started by John Winthrop, who came and started his city on a hill in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, believing he was replacing Israel, which is what you believe. You're a replacement theologian, and you're espousing Catholic, Reformed Catholic doctrine. Let's just call it what it is. You are a Reformed Catholic, okay? You believe in Catholic Reformed theology. It's not just Reformed theology, it's Catholic Reformed theology. Reformation theology wasn't just Catholic. In fact, a lot of it was non-Catholic. And the Anabaptists that existed during that time, of the Waldenses and others, did not hold to a form of Catholicism. That wasn't what you hold to. But anyway, so you like the Puritans. They hung Mary Dyer to death by the neck in Boston, a Quaker, for having dissenting views. Your forefathers did. So you love Puritanism, okay? Your Puritans set up a state church and persecuted the Baptists, confiscating their lands, turning them out into the wilderness, taking their weapons away, banishing them, throwing them out of the state churches, which was fine. Isaac Backus's tombstone in the shape of a pulpit still stands facing the Congregationalist Puritan church. He being dead yet speaketh, it seems like he's still preaching to them to quit living in a system which marries state and church together. But and I get that, your theological viewpoint is, well, we don't try to dominate anybody. No, but Alexius Mustan once said, O Rome, hypocrite that thou art, because thou canst not now in thy decrepitude glut thyself with human flesh, as in times past. What need have we in contending with thee, and entering into the list of controversies? Thine own acts shall be thy burial dress. So although state churchism is not allowed to function in the way that it wants to, ultimately, by bringing in the kingdom and the golden age and all of that, I know that's post-millennialism, all-millennialism, by bringing in the kingdom, I get them confused because neither of them are Bible, so there's not really a source where you can definitively go and study these things out. But nonetheless, it's state churchism, and Roman Catholicism is state churchism, and you're a Catholic, and I hope you understand that. So Catholics have murdered my forefathers, 50 million of them, by all reputable historians and historical evidence. 50 millions of the human family have been slaughtered through the Dark and Middle Ages by Roman Catholicism. And you are, in essence, an extension of that. Your covenant theology is unscriptural. Oh my, none of those covenants are in the Bible. You know, the covenant of redemption, the covenant of works, covenant of grace, none of that's in the Bible. But it is necessary to create that to prop up what you believe, which is that now you've replaced Israel. And so these are the things I've gathered from your website and your doctrinal statement. Now, let me get to the video, if I may. First of all, I don't debate Catholics, and you are a Catholic through and through. There's no doubt about that. And therefore, why is that relevant? Well, Baptists shouldn't be listening to you at all. And Baptist brethren, stay away from James White. I would not give ear to a Catholic. You cannot trust them, not at all. Their theological system is not our theological system. Their Bible is not our Bible. Their heritage is not our heritage. And their goal. See, theology is the engine that runs life. And what you believe about God and your theological system will determine how you live. And ultimately, they want world dominion. Okay? So, as to the video, he says in one place, okay, so he brings up a clip of my speaking. He says, you're 100 years behind. The situation has changed since Bergon, which I disagree with in one sense. In another sense, I get that. Right now, the situation has changed. Sinaiticus now has a huge question mark over it. This is a great book right here. And this book, although I don't agree 100% with Sorensen on it, he does a great job showing that some of the recent research, and I've looked at Pinto's videos, and I've heard the Pinto debate with White, but nonetheless, I think that book really in a very proper way, puts at the very least, a huge question mark as to the antiquity of Sinaiticus. I do believe it was the product of Constantine Simonides, but nonetheless, so things have changed. Everyone just bought that before, and now they know there was a debate that existed, which has been hidden by history, by bad people in history. The history's been hidden, now it's come to light. So I believe, yeah, you're right, the situation has changed in reference to manuscript evidence. In addition, because of high tech, and I'm not a tech guy, but because of all the technology we have today, Vaticanus can be viewed, and Vaticanus is a purely Catholic manuscript. It's sole possession of the Roman Catholic Murderous Institution. And so you don't give them a pass on anything. No, in fact, when Notre Dame burned to the ground, I had the privilege of taking a boat around the whole thing and taking video footage of the pile of ashes. You see, they slaughtered Baptists in front of Notre Dame, and they pillaged southern France, these Catholics that you love so much. And they, and that is who you are. You're a Catholic Reform guy. You can't get away from it. Own it. And Calvinism is the intrinsic backbone of the Catholic covenant theology, the 5 points. But yeah, they pillaged southern France and almost exterminated the human race in southern France in the 9th and 10th centuries. And when these monstrosities, which I've went and I've seen many of them around the world, these basilicas, these massive, Notre Dame and all St. Paul's there in London, and I went to the Lincoln Cathedral, and just all of these, they're built with blood money as they pillaged and persecuted and slaughtered and disemboweled and gutted little babies. And so no, I don't give Catholicism a pass at all. Does it bother me the art burn? No, let it burn. Let every piece of it burn. In Revelation 17, that monstrosity will be judged, and completely. So no sympathy for your Catholicism, and you are Catholic, but nonetheless, so you got Sinaiticus there. Things have changed. Sinaiticus now has a huge question mark over it, and Vaticanus is full of later corrections, which technology now allows us to see. This darling boy, Vaticanus, which is basically, in essence, what your modern versions are based upon. For the most part, it's Vaticanus. And so Alexandrinus and Sinaiticus, yeah, but Vaticanus is, if you remove Vaticanus, your whole deal falls apart. So, yeah, I believe things have changed. Now, this is what's interesting to me. Let me see if I can look here. Okay, so you doubted my story, and I have no idea why, concerning Burgon's writings. They were a prized possession of mine from 96 on, if I remember correctly. This came out in 95, and at Maranatha, now Baptist University, then Maranatha Baptist Bible College. I went there as an older student. I'm 52, so I went there a little bit older, but it was 94, I think, 93 I arrived on campus. And nonetheless, when your book came out, and to give you a little history, my father-in-law went with Cedar home from Pillsbury, split with Clearwaters, helped him start Maranatha. He was a student there, I should say. He didn't help him. I guess he helped him in a sense, but slept in the gymnasium in 68, the first year of Maranatha. So my wife, it was par for the course for her to go to Maranatha, and I met my wife there, got married. But there at Maranatha, they were throwing away all of Burgon's writings. They had moved the library from an upstairs area, which is now a music hall, and in the old main, and they had temporarily put things in the basement, and they were moving into the new library building they built. And but nonetheless, they were getting rid of all kinds of stuff, and they had a table, and specifically on this table was everything Burgon ever wrote. And the reason he had everything that Burgon ever wrote was because it was the first campus in America that had a chapter of the Dean Burgon Society on campus for the defense of the traditional text in the King James Bible. In fact, there was a book written by Everett Fowler defending the King James Bible, and B. Myron Cedarholm, the president and founder of Maranatha, now University, he wrote an endorsement in that and claimed that that Maranatha stood for defending the traditional texts and a formal equivalence, King James Bible. So, yeah, they did. And, I mean, I picked up all of Burgon's writings, put them in big containers, and went into in their library and looked under the subject of King James. And this is what was there. Now, you can call me a liar if you'd like. I was there when it happened. My wife was there when it happened. I have used Burgon's writings in various different ways through the years and in presentations and all of that. And so, but anyway, yeah, that really happened. So you call me a liar, or, saying that sounds like a fairy tale or something, you're wrong about that. And so that is actually what happened. And in fact, this goes to the heart of something, because what was going this dates me. That was in the bookstore at the same time. But anyway, David Black's Concise Guide to Textual Criticism. But anyway, this goes to kind of a deeper or more relevant thing I want to bring out here. And that is, the reason they did that is because they were trying to move away from the King James. And they wanted for people to use the NIV. In fact, we had professors using the NIV and trying to push it in the classrooms. And I know you want to remove yourself, it seems, away from the NIV because you know that it's a bad paraphrase out of a bad text. But nonetheless, this is what they were trying to do. And they used your book. Now, why would they be able to do that? It's interesting because you said the purpose of your book was one thing. I'm saying it was in 95, in context of what was going on in 95, you were trying to get people to turn and throw away their King James Bible and get an NIV. This interests me. In the beginning here, you have, of course, endorsements. And one of the things you have here is John Ankerberg. Could you find a more liberal guy? I mean, honestly, I'm not even going to get into Ankerberg's problems. Nonetheless, Kenneth Barker, Executive Director, NIV Translation Center. That is the second endorsement. And so you had a guy from the NIV translation who was very happy with this. The guy wanted people to use his NIV, and so did you, Mr. White. You wanted to supplant the King James with the NIV. And there's other places in there. One of the places here, and this is on page 5 I'm reading from. So when you're like, I don't know, my book doesn't say that. No, your book actually says this stuff. One of the things it says is that you can be a King James follower and it's not going to offend you. Let me see if I can follow this. Oh, you should never have to wonder if you're going to be accepted by others if you use an NIV rather than a KJV. That was the purpose of the book. I'm writing this book because you're wondering, is it right for me to be judged for using an NIV instead of a King James? And this book's going to settle the issue. No, it's not. Use a paraphrase as opposed to a formal equivalency. That doesn't even, I'm not even dealing with the text there. You said use a paraphrase as opposed to using a formal equivalency. And no one should question your changing from literal translation into the English as opposed to paraphrase. Okay? Now, I mentioned this in the conference, and this is what you took umbrage with, and I'll only take another minute. I said that you propagated the idea that it's okay to use a dynamic equivalence, or what you call a dynamic free-flowing translation, but you contrast that with a more literal formal translation. You're talking about dynamic equivalencies. Let's not, I love how you worded that. I mean, you're a wordsmith. There's no doubt about it. I'll give you some credit on that, all right? You get 2 points for being it's like you almost remind me of a CNN reporter, to be honest with you. You don't want to get caught in anything, but we know that the snake's in the woodpile. You're Catholic and you're trying to supplant the King James with this piece of trash NIV. The use of a particular translation, quoting page 5, your book. See? Okay, so don't say it's not in the book. Is surely a personal choice. Okay, so every person individually gets to choose. That's what a personal choice is. Every person, every Christian gets to choose, all right? Many factors can and should go into your decisions as you purchase Bible translations. You did say this, okay? Don't get on your video and say you didn't say translations. See the word right there underlined? S, that's translations. So we should all be expected. One thing is expected. It's a personal decision. What's not a personal decision is that you're buying multiple translations. Okay? That's what you said. As you purchase translations. So you want people to buy a multiplicity. Okay? Just want to make sure that we understand this is what your book says. Whether you like, I didn't say you could do it based on how you feel. Oh, what does whether you like mean? Whether you like a more literal formal translation. That's based on what I like. Like right now, I'd like to go make some eggs and bacon because I haven't eaten yet this morning, okay? I would also like to go eat a steak, okay? But it's just whatever I choose to do today is what I'm going to do, okay? So yes, you left completely the choice to every person as they buy a multiplicity of translations, that it comes down to whether they like a more literal formal translation or a more dynamic free-flowing translation will impact your choices, okay? So let me get this straight. What your book teaches is if you like dynamic equivalencies, which are nothing more than paraphrases, let's just say what it is. It is people translating largely from the wrong manuscript line, and they're saying, this is what we think that God means, as opposed to, this is what the text says, which is the King James Bible. Okay? So don't say that you don't say these things. You absolutely do. Number one, your book teaches that you want to supplant the King James with the NIV. And number two, you want people to have a multiplicity of translations in their library, which is just absolute confusion. And then thirdly, they get to pick by how they feel, which is whether they would like this or whether they would like that, which normally wouldn't be a big deal, except for when you're dealing with literalness versus paraphrase. Mr. White, and I know, okay, let's talk about the Septuagint, right? Okay. And I wrote a few things down here. First of all, the letter of Aristeas has been disavowed by every knowledgeable scholar for the last 300 years. And I'm sure you'll be able to produce some cronies that would say the letter of Aristeas verifies the usage of the Septuagint and of course Christ quoting from it, as opposed to it seemingly quoting him. The other issue I'm sure you'll bring up is, and again, I put this down here, is these four manuscript scraps, of course, Ryland's papyrus being a part of that, and somehow that verifies. And yet, these manuscript scraps, they're the only manuscript scraps of the Greek Old Testament from before the time of Christ, okay? The only ones. And all they prove is someone had translated part of Deuteronomy into Greek about 150 BC, okay? They're never quoted, and this does not prove who did or did not use those manuscripts or that translation from whence they came or how full it was or anything like that. So this idea we can use any kind of translation mode we want, and you want to argue transmission versus translation. Let's just make it real simple. When people take a text and they put it in the English language, that is a translation, okay? And if you do that any other way than a formal equivalence, that's wrong. And you can't prove it with the Septuagint, because I've been to school on that and I understand the arguments concerning the Septuagint, and I'm not going to accept it. And so, Mr. White, I hope that you understand. Now, the last thing you did was you called me out, okay? And again, I've never debated a Catholic. I was brought up in Catholicism. They're leading me straight to a devil's hell. I was born again of the Spirit of God as a drug addict, as a young man. And after my life had been going great, and then I plummeted because of drug abuse and because of an abusive father and just a terrible home. But I've seen how you debate. You quote all these supposed facts that exist concerning manuscripts that no one can on the spot verify, neither affirm nor deny in a viable fashion. And somehow you frame the debates where you always come out. It's Johnny can't lose with you. But if I would debate you, and I will pray about it, and I have been. Of course, debate in Isaiah 58:4 seems to be spoken of in a negative light in Scripture. I'm really struggling with that. And then Romans 1:29, debating a man who claims to know it all and, plays Johnny Can't Lose in his debate style. And you're a very good debater. But Church of Christ people are historically the greatest of debaters, and they're all lost and going to hell. I didn't say you were. I'm just simply saying it doesn't prove anything because you can debate good on facts that are unverifiable in the moment. But Romans 1:29 places debate in the same category as murder and vile, wicked things. And so truly I want to please Christ more than anything, and I don't know if that would be the right course, although I'm not completely ruling it out. But I want you to understand this: it won't be me on defense, it will be you on defense of your Catholicism, you on defense of your staunch electionism and predestinarianism, and which historically is not biblical doctrine. It started with Augustine, the seeds of it, and then its fruition came in Calvin, but it never existed on the planet in the scriptural assemblies. And I can prove that historically. And I would love to do that, actually. And I would love to debate who you are, because you are a plant in the churches. You've caused a lot of trouble. You wrote a book to get good God-fearing people who will never know Greek and Hebrew in their entire life, who sit in church pews, to now doubt the Bible they once believed was God's word in their lap. That's despicable. You wrote a book to push dynamic equivalencies. You did. Own this. You need to repent of this and get right with God, Mr. White. As to whether I would debate you, I'm taking it before the throne of grace.